The cold had always been a quiet predator in Maya Bennett's life, creeping into cracked windows, whispering through thin walls, settling into her bones like a memory she could never shake. That December morning felt colder than most. Frost coated the inside of her tiny apartment like a warning, and her daughter Sophie slept beneath a mountain of blankets, as if the world outside might swallow them whole. 28 years old, juggling 2 jobs, and living inside a space no bigger than a storage closet, Maya carried the exhaustion of a lifetime in her chest. Yet when she watched Sophie stir awake with that hopeful, unbreakable smile, something inside her refused to collapse. She stood barefoot on the linoleum, staring at the frozen window, never imagining that before nightfall, her life would be thrust into a story she never asked to enter. A story rooted in legacy, betrayal, and a frozen mansion waiting for its rightful heir. When the suited stranger walked into the diner later that day, carrying a thick manila envelope and a truth from a branch of the family tree she never knew existed, Maya felt something shift beneath her feet. An inheritance. A mansion sealed for 50 years. A name she did not know but was tied to by blood. And as she signed her name with trembling hands, she thought she was receiving a miracle. But in truth, she had just unlocked the door to a danger she could not yet see. The gates of the Frost estate rose before her like the entrance to a forgotten kingdom. Iron twisted into Gothic patterns, crusted with decades of ice, guarding a mansion that slept beneath layers of snow and secrets. Sophie pressed her face to the car window, breath fogging the glass as they drove up the winding path, branches arching overhead like frozen cathedral arches. When Maya stepped onto the creaking porch, the cold wrapped around her like a shroud. Yet inside, the air shifted. The mansion breathed Christmas, every room frozen in time, every hallway adorned with wreaths, candles, garlands, and trees decorated with ornaments older than the town itself. But deeper than the untouched beauty was a feeling, a presence woven into the walls, waiting. The master bedroom held photographs of a woman she had never met, her great-aunt Evelyn, standing beside a man whose smile carried both joy and tragedy. The calendar on the wall was still turned to December 1973, the day circled in red. Christmas Eve. The day everything stopped. And at the end of the upstairs hallway, a small door carved with holly and stars reminded Maya of the kind of magic people warn children about, not because it isn't real, but because it is. The door opened only after she pressed a hidden symbol, releasing a rush of frozen air. Behind it were stairs. Old stone stairs descending into darkness as if the house had been holding its breath for half a century, waiting for her, waiting for someone brave enough to follow what Evelyn could not finish. The room at the bottom of those steps was unlike anything Maya had ever seen. A cathedral carved from stone, shimmering with the glow of hundreds of untouched Christmas artifacts. A towering evergreen stood in the center, its branches adorned with ornaments so delicate they looked like they held memories rather than glass. Around the circular chamber, display cases held treasures from forgotten centuries, imperial nutcrackers, hand-carved nativity scenes, music boxes crafted for monarchs and popes. Yet wonder turned to dread when she found the ledger, Evelyn's journal, and the letters written to Thomas, her lost fiancé who never lived to see their wedding. Each page trembled with grief, fear, and truth. Thomas had discovered the collection was compromised, stolen pieces hidden among legal acquisitions. He planned to expose the network behind it. Days later, he was dead. Evelyn sealed the room, knowing powerful men wanted what she had gathered, and she spent her remaining years guarding the evidence of crimes stretching across continents. Maya felt the weight of generations settle onto her shoulders as she read Evelyn's last desperate words. Someday someone braver will come, someone who can finish what we started. When footsteps echoed above her, she imagined the killers returning, but it was only Richard, the lawyer, whose shock at the room mirrored her own. Still, his warning chilled her more than the chamber's air. Word of the inheritance was spreading fast, and if people suspected what truly lay beneath the Frost estate, the danger Evelyn feared would awaken once more. Danger arrived quicker than she could brace for it. Calls flooded the diner. Strangers in tailored suits appeared outside her apartment. People she'd never met suddenly spoke her name with familiarity and hunger. The town watched her like she'd stolen something from them rather than inherited it. A brick smashed her window. Thief was painted across her building, and then came the men who didn't bother pretending. They arrived in black sedans, silent, deliberate, predatory. Their leader, Vincent Duca, had eyes cold enough to freeze fire. He offered her $20 million to walk away. When she hesitated, the offer sharpened into a threat. They knew her schedule, her daughter's school, her routine. They were the same network Evelyn had feared, the same shadowed force that had taken Thomas nearly 50 years ago. Maya went to the sheriff, desperate for protection, but the law saw her as trouble, not a victim. "Take the deal," he said. "Some fights aren't worth dying for." Those words echoed through her long after she'd left. Safety felt like a shrinking circle closing around her and Sophie. When she found her apartment ransacked, not robbed, but searched, she realized that danger was moving with purpose. And the only person who seemed willing to stand with her was Grace, the diner owner who had once been saved by the Frost family and now vowed to protect the last of them. Yet even Grace's kindness couldn't silence the truth clawing at Maya's heart. Running would save them, but finishing what Evelyn started might save countless others. Desperation pushed her toward clarity. With Grace's help and a Boston attorney named Marcus Chen, sharp-minded and relentless, Maya began to see the enormity of the battlefield she'd stepped into. The mansion wasn't a relic, it was a vault of evidence. Every stolen artifact was a thread leading back to an underworld of smugglers, corrupt dealers, and a global network that had thrived for decades. Marcus understood the stakes immediately. Protection, immunity, federal coordination. Interpol, the FBI. He saw what Evelyn had built, a case stronger than she'd ever realized, and he saw what Maya risked by holding it. They worked in secrecy while sedans prowled the town like wolves. Threats escalated. Sophie's school received calls questioning custody. Grace's home was broken into. Not for valuables, only to send a message. "We can reach you anywhere." Still, Marcus believed in a strategy Evelyn never had the privilege to use: public exposure. "Visibility is your shield," he said. "If the world knows, they can't make you disappear." Meanwhile, a museum curator confirmed the staggering truth. The legal pieces alone were worth over $200 million. The stolen ones, another $112 million, would return to their rightful owners, but the evidence of their theft could dismantle an empire of criminals. Maya stared at the figures, overwhelmed not by greed but by responsibility. She had never held anything of worth before. Not money, not safety, not the luxury of being believed. Now she held history, justice, and a secret dangerous enough to kill for. And for the first time, she understood why Evelyn waited for someone who still remembered how to be brave. The decision came not from fear, but from Sophie. One night, after a quiet dinner thick with tension, her daughter whispered, "Mama, the lady from the mansion showed me a door in my dream. She wants us to finish what she couldn't." Something inside Maya steadied. It wasn't supernatural, it was the echo of a legacy deep enough to reach a child's imagination. That same night, Maya returned to the mansion one last time, searching deeper. Behind the massive Christmas tree in the chamber, she found a hidden stone door. Inside was a vault, metal boxes filled with cash, gold coins, jewels, and documents Evelyn had preserved as lifelines for whoever came next. But most important of all was the ledger detailing every stolen item, every corrupt dealer, every false provenance, every connection leading back to the network that had murdered Thomas. It was the missing piece Evelyn had never dared to reveal. Over the next 3 days, Maya cataloged every artifact, photographed every record, and copied every page. She worked with the desperation of a mother and the resolve of a woman who'd finally stopped running. When she stepped out into the snow again, 4 black sedans waited at the gate. Duca's men were done negotiating, but Maya was no longer alone. Marcus stood beside her, armed with evidence, federal backing, and a plan that would force the truth into daylight. And daylight, unlike shadows, could not be intimidated. December 23rd arrived like a storm. Reporters swarmed the Frost estate. Federal vehicles lined the drive. The world's eyes shifted toward a small Vermont town where a single mother prepared to expose a criminal empire. Maya walked onto the steps of the mansion wearing a borrowed coat and a courage she had grown herself. Cameras flashed. Microphones lifted. Voices shouted questions. But when she began speaking, the crowd fell silent. She told them everything, about Evelyn, about Thomas, about the chamber beneath the house and the artifacts preserved like frozen truths. She announced that every stolen piece would be returned to the rightful institutions. She confirmed that the legal pieces would be sold through transparent channels to fund her daughter's future. And she presented the ledger, an encyclopedic map of criminal activity spanning 5 decades. The investigation ignited instantly. International warrants were issued. Museums across the world celebrated long-lost items finally being found. And Duca's network, exposed under global scrutiny, disintegrated like ice beneath a rising sun. Still, danger hadn't vanished. Authorities moved quickly to arrest the men stationed around town. Maya watched Duca in handcuffs, his expression not angry but defeated, because the one weapon he could not silence was the truth spoken publicly. As snow began to fall, soft as forgiveness, Maya realized she had done more than survive the Frost legacy. She had rewritten it. In the months that followed, life did not magically become easy. Trauma lingered in quiet ways, Sophie waking during storms, Maya flinching at the sound of heavy footsteps, Grace keeping her door unlocked for them long after they no longer needed it. But slowly, warmth replaced fear. The legal auctions funded a new future, one with a home that didn't leak cold air, a private sketch studio for Sophie, and the kind of peace Maya had never dared imagine. Evelyn's mansion was transformed into a protected historical site.